connector types and their voltages. Now, first of all, a power supply, as I would imagine you know by now, is a device included inside a computer chassis if it's a desktop computer. If it's a laptop computer, which we'll talk about in a little while, your power supply is actually part of your power cable. But the idea is the same. A PSU converts the alternating current wall power coming in from your electrical outlets to regulated direct current. The computer doesn't use AC. The computer uses direct current, or DC. Now, the standard voltage is an electrical term that refers to a potential difference. In other words, from one point to another, you have some difference in voltage, and voltage tends to go from where it's higher to where it's lower. There's a direct relationship between the voltage number and the current number. It's a positive or direct relationship. The more voltage you have going through a circuit, the more pressure increases, and that needs to be carefully moderated by your PSU because those electrical components can easily be overloaded and burnt out. 5 volts, 3.3 volts, and 12 volts are the standard voltages for the ATX standard, and power supplies, if you read the label, are normally given in a measurement called the watt. The watt in electrical parlance refers to the amount of work that a device is able to produce or handle. Now, you'll notice the Corsair model you see in the upper right has a ponytail, as it's called, has a braid of cables with various connectors on it. But if you look closer, there's also some modular ports. And that's excellent because the way power supplies used to be is that you'd have a big old braid of cables and any that you weren't using had to stay inside the case, and that's going to interrupt airflow and make the air warmer inside the computer. Not a good thing. Nowadays, you'll want to look around for modular power supplies where you can plug in only those power connectors that you actually need. There's also a small form factor ATX called the Flex ATX power supply. You also hear the term micro ATX. Do not be confused. This is not the laptop power supply. This is a smaller form factor power supply that, for instance, can be fit into a rack server appliance in server rooms. To that point, because on server devices we want to build redundancy at all levels in order to keep the machine running in the event of a hardware failure, you'll often find these Flex ATX power supplies have handles on them to facilitate literally yanking it out if you have a failure and slapping in a new one. Once again, I want to show an ATX motherboard, this time calling out various power interfaces on the surface. First of all, you see the ATX connectors. These are the primary power interfaces that link the motherboard to your PSU. You may not have the smaller one, but you'll certainly have a 20 or 24 pin connector, very similar to what you see at the bottom of this particular motherboard. And these ATX connectors, like I said, are very important because they provide power rails or collections of motherboard traces to all other components on the motherboard. Now, you know how I'm a big fan of talking about technology trends? One of the trends is we have devices, in particular I'm thinking of PCI Express video cards, that are so robust and have such powerful GPUs or graphical processing units that they actually require their own connector to the PSU, and that's certainly the case nowadays. Smaller 3.3 voltage devices, in some case 5 volt devices, can be connected to the motherboard and again draw the power through those ATX connectors. These ones that we're looking at here are power connectors for fans like the CPU fan and a case fan. We also have a collection of power connectors here that are wired, I should say, to your external lights like your hard drive indicator light, your power light, and so forth.